floors that are popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
As if they
detonated,
were planned
yeah.
to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. The smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America.
talking about a large-scale terror attack 19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis." Trump.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Is this really Trump before 9/11? Have you read this?
It's 2000 in his book.
Are we making that? Did you make
Nick.
this up, Mika?
Nick.
No, really quickly, though. I mean, so Willie, that was
2000.
2000.
In a book he wrote in the year 2000. Yeah.
Well, it was published in 2000. He could have written it in 1999 for all we know.
Exactly. He might have
But
been
he
a bit
did.
more prescient.
So he basically predicted the attacks from Osama bin Laden.
In a second, that looked like a good-sized plane came in and hit the World Trade Center from the other side.
It's accurate at the same time. So
Donald Trump is on the line, and we know him as the man behind lots of real estate in Manhattan. And of course, Donald, I understand you were actually a witness to what happened this morning.
Well, I have a window that looks directly at the World Trade Center, and I saw this huge explosion. I was with a group of people, and I really couldn't even believe it. And even, I think, worse than that, for years I've looked right directly at the building. I'd see the Empire State Building in the foreground and the World Trade Center in the background. And now I'm looking at absolutely nothing. It's just gone. And it's just hard to believe.
Donald, Alan Marcus here. Your building is, the Trump Tower, is one of the great tourist attractions in the world. It's well known universally. Are you taking any precautions there in light of what happened at the World Trade Center?
Well, Alan, we've always had, as you know, very, very strong security, but there's very little you can do about planes crashing into a building. I mean, you look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So, and I just spoke to him. There's nothing you can do when people are going to be bombing planes at your building. Now,
Donald,
I guess maybe the world is going to be changing.
Donald, you have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest. And I just spoke to my people, and I mean, you look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
and we've found out what caused it and maybe corrected it. What does the city need to do?
Well, I guess the big thing that you really will have to do is never forget. Really will have to do is never forget.
In the year 2000, Donald, you considered running for president. If you had done that and if you had been successful, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Well, I'd be taking a very, very tough line, Alan. I mean, you know, most people feel they know at least approximately the group of people that did this and where they are. But
Donald, you're probably the best-known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation, and it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly, because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down into the building. So it was getting the speed from going downhill, so to speak. It just seemed to me that to do that kind of destruction is even more than a big plane, because you're talking about taking out steel, the heaviest caliber steel that was used on a building. I mean, these buildings were rock solid. And, you know, it's just an amazing thing. This country is different today, and it's going to be different than it ever was for many years to come.
Very profound statement and very true.
Donald, one last question for you. Given the magnitude of how much of American commerce took place within the Twin Towers, what do you, as you're an expert on this, what do you think is going to be the fallout over the next several weeks, months, and even years?
Many firms had all of their offices, as you know, in the World Trade Center. It was 8 million square feet. 8 million square feet is the size of some cities. And we had 8 million square feet in the world, 4 million in each building. They were huge buildings, not only in height, but, you know, each floor was 50,000 feet. They were monstrous floors. Each floor was almost a city in itself, and they had 110 floors or so.
Well, I've never seen anything like it. I've seen 2 huge 110-story buildings that are reduced to rubble. Thousands and thousands. I have hundreds of men inside working right now, and we're bringing down another 125 in a little while, and run because you have all the buildings around it, which are in such a weakened state that people just don't know. It's 50-story buildings that you don't know if they're going to fall down. So it's a terrible thing for the workers, and it's a terrible thing for the world, really.
You've had an impact on the skyline of New York. What is it like as you see it now?
It's like a whole different skyline. It's like a whole different city and world. I cannot believe the sight of Lower Manhattan without the World Trade Center, and therefore we have to rebuild, not necessarily in that form, but we have to rebuild at least as good and maybe better.
Donald Trump did it again today. He did what he always does when he talks about 9/11. He lied. This time he told a new lie, and the proof that it is a lie is right there in the video recording of what the president said. The proof is the silence after the president said it, a silence that speaks the truth to the president's lie. Today, Donald Trump profanely and falsely tried to include himself among the very brave people who went to Ground Zero, where the World Trade Center once stood, and exposed themselves to the toxic debris there that made so many of the first responders fall ill, some fatally ill. Here is President Trump reading his teleprompter today at the bill signing of the 9/11 Victims' Compensation Fund, a bill that the president did absolutely nothing to help pass.
Many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders. And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder, but I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you.
This is what makes Donald Trump such a pathological liar, that he will lie directly to people who he knows the truth.
I was there. I lost many, many friends in that tragedy.
And I immediately tweeted that that was also a lie, and Donald Trump never said it again. Donald Trump lost 0 friends on 9/11. Donald Trump attended 0 9/11 funerals. 0.